Black waiter thought life was over until she learned she was born to shine. What happens when you're working 2 jobs, barely sleeping, and start believing your life has no purpose? That's where I was, and I almost gave up. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is now, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. My name is Patrick, I'm 34, and last year I was a waiter at a diner in Chicago, working the 4 p.m. to midnight shift, 6 days a week. The other job, cleaning offices at 5 a.m. I lived in a tiny studio with a leaky ceiling and one heater that clicked on and off like it had mood swings. My uniform smelled like grease, my feet hurt every night, and my bank account always in the red. I used to look in the mirror and ask, is this all there is? No degree, no rich family, no connections, just bills, exhaustion, and silence. One rainy Tuesday, I dropped a tray of food, spaghetti, garlic bread, soda all over the floor. A customer yelled, "Watch it, boy." The manager took $20 from my tips for the mess. I walked out during my break and sat on the curb crying. Not loud sobs, just quiet tears mixing with the rain. I thought maybe life forgot about me. But then something changed. It wasn't money. It wasn't a miracle. It was a book. An old man came into the diner every Thursday. Never said much, just ordered black coffee and toast. One day he saw me reading a torn magazine while waiting for orders. "You like to read?" he asked. "A little," I said. "Helps me escape." He reached into his bag and handed me a small book, The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz. "Read this," he said. "It helped me when I was 25, broke and ready to quit." I took it, not thinking much of it. But that night, instead of falling asleep to TV noise, I opened the book. One line hit me like lightning. "You weren't born to struggle, you were born to succeed." I read it again, then again, and suddenly I started seeing my life differently. Not as stuck, but as unstarted. The book talked about belief, about vision, about how poor thinking keeps people poor, even if they work hard. I realized I'd been surviving, not living. I was working to exist, not to grow. So I made a decision. I cut back on junk food, saved $5 a week, and bought more books. I listened to free podcasts on mindset, money, and motivation. I started waking up early, not just for work, but to write down goals. One goal stood out: own my own café, serve real food, treat people with dignity. People laughed when I told them, "You want to own a place? With what money?" I didn't have an answer, but I had a dream, so I kept saving. $10 here, $20 there. I sold old clothes, took online courses at night, learned about small business loans. 6 months later, I applied for a micro-grant for Black women entrepreneurs. I wrote about my story, about the diner, about feeling invisible, about wanting to create a place where people like me could feel seen. 2 weeks later, I got the email, "Congratulations, Keisha, you've been awarded $10,000. I screamed so loud my neighbor banged on the wall. With that money, I found a small space, a broken-down sandwich shop in a quiet part of town. I painted the walls, bought second-hand tables, hired one employee, a young boy named T who reminded me of myself. And 3 months ago, Soulful Bites Cafe opened. No fancy sign, no investors, just love, grit, and chicken pot pie made from my grandma's recipe. Now I serve breakfast and lunch. We hire people getting back on their feet. Every table has a little card that says you belong here. Last week, the old man came in. I didn't recognize him at first, without his coat, sitting at the counter. Then he smiled, "Told you the book would help." I hugged him so tight he laughed. "This place is amazing," he said. "You did this." "No," I said. "You gave me the first push, I just kept walking. Because here's what I've learned. Life doesn't always give you a fair start. But it does give you a choice. You can stay on the curb, letting the rain wash over you. Or you can pick up a book, hear one truth, and say, I was born to shine. Now when I walk into Soulful Bites each morning, I don't see a cafe. I see proof. Proof that a black boy from the South Side with no help, no luck, no safety net, can rise, not because she's special, but because she refused to quit. Have you ever felt invisible, then decided to shine anyway? Share your story below. Like this video if Keisha's journey inspires you to keep going. Subscribe for more true motivational stories of courage, faith, and rising from nothing. Remember, you aren't behind, you aren't broken, you were born to exist and to excel.